Hey, how's it going? So in this video, I'm going to be talking about why I think most black people are broke, and this is looking at how it is in terms of income inequality everywhere, but especially in Africa. So the place that's supposed to be the richest place in the world is Africa, based on the various reasons why it's the place where you find all of the minerals, you find all of the people, you find the best weather, you find animals, sunshine, the best soil. All of these things are in Africa, and not to mention that it's surrounded by oceans and seas and all of the other continents. So there's no reason why it should be a broken place, but the people there are broken, and they apparently are broke. So the reason why this is happening is one of the craziest reasons ever. Is one of them is that there was colonization, which is still not fully acknowledged to this day, because through colonization a lot of wealth was just siphoned out of Africa, and it went to different places in different parts of the world. So when we understand that this is one of the main reasons why this happened in a way that it happened, it wasn't supposed to happen this way or this like this, but it happened fraudulently because of colonization. But moving past that, we still are facing the fact that it still should be lucrative to be a person who is African, since the history of Africa is so rich, and there are so many advantages of these people. Because I was always looking at different things and the different facts about Africa, like, all right, cool, they were building pyramids. And I'm not even talking about Egypt, I'm talking about Sudan, where you have the most pyramids in the world. But if you look at Sudan, you see like the country is in disarray. Like, what's going on there? Like, it was declared a failed state at some point, and there's a war every other day. But this place has pyramids. These pyramids are representing a certain civilization, and this civilization is the Kushite civilization, which was one of the most advanced civilizations to date. So, why is it like this? So, there's so many contradictions when you look at Africa, and one of the most obvious things is the external interference that has created so many problems. However, when you look at the whole spiritual nature of our lives, that we are spirit beings who have a physical body, you have to appreciate the fact that it's imperative for every person to have a spiritual understanding in order to have a physical manifestation. So if you want to have or gain anything physically, it all starts spiritually. So knowing that your thoughts become your actions become your destiny, is to know that every thought you have is a spiritual manifestation of your essence, which in turn gives you a realization of the possibilities. So when all of this was happening within Africa, within the continent, and other continents as well. I'm talking about Africa because this is where I'm from. So that's where everyone's from. That's where you're from. So I'm talking about the motherland, the cradle of mankind, which affects everybody, because it's like a person should not ever forget their parents. This is the fourth commandment, right? Obey your parents so that all of your days will be numbered and multiplied and blessed. So the motherland, the mother, it's important regardless. So so all of this happened, and the spiritual aspects that took place are the most important ones, which are affecting our thoughts, our ideas, and our emotions. Because you also have to consider that if a person's massacred, like you've seen your whole village wiped out, you've seen your whole city wiped out, you've seen your whole town wiped out, what does that do to your mind? What does that do to your person? So this is something that is transferred in the DNA information, which is traumatic. So this trauma never escapes your spirit, your spire, your DNA, your helix. So it's still there. So all of this information is still there, and through this there's some emotional trauma that is still unacknowledged and undealt with, and treated like it doesn't exist. So there's this spiritual psychology as aspect that has to be addressed, because cash, money, and wealth is all spiritual. So when you look at when Jesus was looking for disciples. He first chose Peter. And the way that he did it is they were fishing, and then he told them to let down their nets at a certain point, which Peter was not sure if it would do anything, because he was very experienced in fishing, and he knew that that spot didn't have fish. But in any case, he just listened to Jesus. He went and cast his nets down, but then he caught the biggest catch he'd ever caught, ever. So he realized that this type of abundance, this type of wealth, because he's going to sell all of these fish. So this fish represents wealth and money. So it's like this type of wealth can only be spiritually induced. So he fell to his knees and then he says to Jesus, "Get away from me, for I am a sinful man." So in this understanding, he's exposing that he understands that wealth, cash, and everything is garnered from your spiritual capacity. So he felt that he is unholy or unworthy to have such spiritual capacity to handle that wealth. So when you have a certain amount of wealth, it ends up becoming a responsibility to your community, to your own self, because a lot of people are afraid to become wealthy because of that depravity in themselves, that they feel that they're unworthy and they're unholy. So this spiritual psychology aspect affects your own wealth. If you have this idea that your hands are not clean enough to handle $1 billion, so a lot of people just think that it's impossible for them to be billionaires or millionaires or rich or even well off, because they just don't see it as a spiritual possibility in their minds. They just have this mindset that is closed for all of that. So having an openness is to be free, is to be secure in yourself. So this security need is very important, because there's no way you're gonna open your heart when you're still heartbroken. When like someone breaks your heart, it's very hard for you to open up. So when you're already closed in yourself, in your soul, in your spirit, because you already believe that you're black, you're dirt, black is bad, and everyone who is black has always been miserable and stuff like that, which is not true, because when you look at African history, you see all of these consistent stories of greatness, of wealth, of understanding, and all of these things. But then people are not taught that aspect or that truth. They're taught another truth, the alternative truth, Kellyanne Conway. Like, this is an alternative truth for sure, because we're taught something that is happening in parallel to the truth, which is an alternative truth. So when we actually look at African history, we see a whole different reality, whole different kingdoms, whole different thinking mentalities. And like, I hate to love Black Panther, because it's just like, to me it's just a tease. So it's just talking about Black Panther and how Wakanda was gonna be because of the knowledge of the sun and the moon, Solomon. So all of this was lost, but what we have is the need for spirituality. So spirituality is the spiritual aspect. Spirituality is the thoughts in your heart, in your mind, in your body. This is spirituality. However, there's another word called spirituality. So spirituality are the possessions of the clergy, or the possessions of the spiritual. So spirituality and spirituality, just like realty and reality, these are words that are akin, or that have the same construction, but they are different. They're different components. So these words you might not know, but the dictionary knows. These words you might not know, but the people who use these words know. They are the authorities. They author, they write. They are the authorities. So they author your rights. They author, they speak, they're influential, they're fluent. And they know these words, like spirituality is different from spirituality. However, when you see it on paper, you're just like, oh, spirituality. But spirituality is the possessions of the holy. So this is different from materialization and materialism. So being materialistic is being a consumer, which is not good, right? Which is just wanting everything that is made of matter, just wanting the matrix. This is the matter. But then when you have materialization. It means that you have this idea, you have these thoughts, and what you're going to do is to create a certain way that these thoughts can actually manifest. So this is materialization, as opposed to materialism. So understanding that to have this spirituality is to also be spiritual. To have anything that you want to materialize is a spiritual matter, because it starts in the ether. It starts in your mind. Whatever you're going to materialize is going to start as an idea or spiritual, and then it becomes a spirituality. So it starts as a spirituality, and then it becomes a spirituality. So this is the world we live in. It's all a world which is made by words. World is word. The universe, one verse, one verse, a group of words. This is everything in the universe is one word or one words. So this is the world of words. So, so when we have this understanding, it's very important to know that knowledge is the keystone to a person's liberation, because my people perish from a lack of knowledge, plain and simple. So knowing certain things is knowing that spirituality is spiritualization, right? So moving further, all right, black people are broke because of something called the hierarchy of needs. So Maslow has a certain scheme, this one here. So this is called the hierarchy of needs. So what we have here is this pyramid structure, okay? So it has 5 different levels. The base level is physiological. The second one is safety, okay? So the physiological stage is when you want to actualize, like when you want to have clothes and sex so that you can be successful, because to be successful is to have a successor. So physiologically, everyone needs that sex in order to preserve their gene, their generation. So in order to generate anything, the genesis has to be physiological. This is why Genesis starts with the physical body. So the physical body, the air that he had, starts also with the water that was surrounding him. And then it tells us about the clothes that they ended up wearing. And this is the genesis, right? From this genesis, they left the garden. And then they left the garden, and then this is what we need in this world. Still the rivers, still the gold, the rivers of gold, right? Still the air we breathe, and still the clothes we have, and the information, because they were given information, they were given prophecies. So all of this was physiological. And then the second stage is safety. So safety is also the clothes, but beyond that, also the house. Okay, what are you going to eat? All of these things are in your mind now because of safety. You need to be safe. So when a person is in a place like Africa, where there's so many wars, so there's like very little safety, or the mindset of safety. So this is something that is so horrible, because war is not natural. No animals in the animal kingdom go to war except for people. So these people who are worse than animals are starting these wars. So you have safety, and then after that you have love. So love is when you are thinking about your family and things like that. And then you have the esteem. So when you have the esteem, now you're thinking about your legacy. Yeah, like Jay-Z's album, right? Yeah, he's talking about his whole legacy and all of these things. This is the next step. But then beyond that, you have the final stage here at the top. I didn't write it in because this is now the self-actualization stage. So when you're now self-actualized, it means that you're now at this point where all of your ideas are now a reality. All of your ideals are becoming a reality. So just give me a second here. I hope that I can find this. Yeah, great. This is good. So when we're actually looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what we're also looking at is the same thing over here. Okay. So it's a bit blurry, but you can see that this is the same type of structure, the same type of pyramid. And here we have this eye, which is representing the actualization. So a lot of people, all right. So first of all, realize that this pyramid is not evil. It is African. It is representing the story in Exodus. So when you're reading the story in Exodus, what you're talking about is a legal entity and a legal person. This is just a way of saying how the people actually left this pyramid. So it's talking about this. So it's talking about how they were able to free themselves and become actualized by God. So when we have the dollar and this self-actualization is missing, it means that the self-actualization of this person who's trying to leave this hierarchy system is being misplaced, is being taken over. Okay, and this has multiple meanings. Okay, so this is how this capstone is actually taken away. So when this is happening, it means that the people who want to self-actualize are being detached from their basis, from their roots, and through this you have to conform to this type of society, which is a Babylon. Okay, so understanding that all of this is happening so that we can self-actualize, but then this self-actualization is being manipulated by outside participants. Because when you look at the map of Africa, like I have it over here, right? So what you're actually looking at is the whole continent, right? But then there are three places where you have access to the rest of the world. So everyone comes from the southern part of Africa, the Cape, which is the cap, which is the head, the Cape Town, and then they just go to Cairo, and then they go from Cape to Cairo. But then through this, they go to Egypt, and everyone who left Africa to populate the whole of the world had to leave through Egypt or through Gibraltar. So some of them went through Spain, some of them went through Egypt, but some of them went through Oman and Ethiopia, Somalia, and the Silk Road was actually part of Ethiopia, not part of China. This is something else. That the Silk Road itself is African, but it's taken. But if you just Google Project Atalanta, you'd see that the Silk Road is Ethiopian, but then it's now being taken away. This is the capstone being removed. So when people were leaving Africa, everyone went through Egypt in a sense. So when everyone left through Egypt, what they're leaving is this pyramid. What they're doing is self-actualizing. These pharaohs were actually creating these pyramids so that they could leave this world. This was the whole idea of this African belief, that they created these pyramids so that they could go to another world. So this was a self-actualization process. So the same thing happened when people were leaving Egypt, that this was a self-actualization. They were actually going up the stages of this whole paradigm. So this was a person having a paradigm shift. So this happened through Egypt, the pyramids. So through this, we still have this knowledge that is now being usurped and taken over. And now it's on money, now it's in movies, now it's everywhere. And people are now afraid of this whole idea, because the people in control of this were initially the Greeks, because the Greeks were taught by the Egyptians. So the Greeks were taught by the Egyptians, the Timbuktuans, like the Moroccans, Timbuktuans, they call that. I think I just coined that. We'll call them that from now on. It's done. They were educated by all of these people, and through that, they got this knowledge, but then they wanted to infuse it with certain other elements of dark intent, because the people who came to Africa did it with dark intent, even though they were not dark, they were light. It's the old switcheroo again. But so when you look at the poverty of Africa, this is actually what you're confronted with, is the fact that there are certain people who are trapped in certain rungs of this hierarchy of needs, and this is creating all of this poverty. Okay, so when people do not have self-actualization, then it means that they are only left with self-esteem, and self-esteem is just steam. It's just puffing up, but then this puffing up is some like inflating yourself, and through this inflated ego, you're supposed to go higher to self-actualize and then become the base. So through losing their actual minds, the capstone, Cape to Cairo, they're not able to become who they are truly supposed to become. And this is happening because their capstone, their mind, is being taken over. They don't even know their history. People in Africa don't know their history. People in Africa don't know their language. They don't know their heritage. They don't know their heroes. Yeah, they'll tell you about Christopher Columbus. Like, they'll tell you about all of these American heroes. They'll tell you about George Washington. But they won't tell you about Haile Selassie. You don't have to be Rasta to know him. You have to be African to know him. You have to be African to know that he created the United Nations. You have to be African to know that he was talking about a United States of Africa. You don't have to be a Rastafarian to know that. You just have to be African. But then they will tell you all of these things in movies, and Black Panther and Avengers. Like Avengers, when these black people are coming out of the suns because they are the sons of light. All of these things are indicating to you. When you read the Bible, you're actually going to hear like God's hair is the same texture as the Wakanda president's hair. That's the woolly hair, the black woolly white hair. This is the same hair. And he is the son of the light. They come out of the light, and Jesus is the son. So yeah, I'm not going to go too theological on this, but the black people are lacking spirituality. So now they're lacking spirituality. Spirituality is the state of holiness, being righteous, being true, being fruitful. That is spirituality. Because fruit is spiritual. Like, how does the seed know what to do? It's all spiritual. So spirituality is the spiritual aspect, and spirituality is the possession to actually have the harvest of the fruit. This is spirituality. And we've lost that because we lost our spirituality, our understanding. So without that spirituality, you have no connection with fruit, because fruit is natural. You have no connection with gold and silver, because gold and silver is natural. So you have no connection to nature, and God is nature. So God creates gold. He says the gold and the silver is mine. And God and gold is so similar. Mari Mwari. It's so similar. Not the same thing, but it's spirituality, spirituality. God, gold. Okay, Mari Mwari. Okay, so all of these things are things that a person must understand in order to ascend in their own minds, in their own self, in order to gain what is rightfully theirs. Because a person who is born with the best weather in the world, all so many animals in a paradise, so many things, but then we're given this dichotomy, this understanding, this paradigm. Actually, it's another pyramid where we have to ascend, because through money we have to ascend higher and higher and higher and higher. But money is a fiction, but money is necessary in our world. And this money is creating this pyramid paradigm where you need money for physiological things. You need money for safety. You need money for love. Okay? You need money for esteem. You need money to self-actualize yourself. You can't do all of this without this, without the dollars, right? You need all of this for that. So this is the spirituality messing with the spirituality. Because in normal senses, what we're talking about is not paper. What we're talking about is spiritual gold. Gold is spiritual. Go to heaven, you're going to find gold. Like the kings around the throne of God offer him gold crowns. So yeah. Thanks a lot for watching this. I'll see you soon.